Amara thought their second meeting would be the last, that someone like Zane Kingston would get bored of the novelty and move on. But she was wrong. For the next few days, Zane's presence lingered like a storm on the horizon, creeping into her thoughts, making her restless. She knew better than to get involved with someone from his world. Her mother's life was a silent warning of what could happen when dreams and reality collide. Still, no matter how much she tried to push him from her mind, he kept finding a way back in. And then, just as abruptly as he had disappeared from the bar that night, Zane returned. It was late evening when Amara stepped out of the cafe where she worked, her shift finally over. The sky was a deep purple, and the streets of Kingston buzzed with life. Couples laughed over rum, street vendors shouted their final offers, and the scent of jerk chicken lingered in the air. Amara pulled her bag closer and began walking, her thoughts on nothing in particular, when a familiar voice called out from behind her. "Amara." She turned, and there he was, Zane standing just a few feet away, leaning casually against the hood of his sleek black car. The same lazy grin played on his lips, but his eyes looked like they had been through hell since the last time she saw him. There was a heaviness in them now, a kind of frustration that came from carrying burdens no one else could see. Amara folded her arms, raising an eyebrow. "What are you doing here?" Zane shrugged as if the answer was obvious. "Looking for you." There it was again, that magnetic pull between them. She knew she should walk away, should tell him to leave her alone, but her body betrayed her, staying rooted to the spot. The way he looked at her made her feel like the only person in the world, and it terrified her. "You shouldn't be here," Amara said quietly, glancing around. "This isn't your kind of place?" Zane smirked. "Maybe I'm trying to change that." Before she could respond, he opened the passenger door of his car. "Get in," he said, his tone soft but insistent. Amara hesitated. Every warning bell in her head was ringing. This was a bad idea. A terrible idea. But there was something about Zane, something she couldn't explain, that made her want to throw caution to the wind. Just once. She bit her lip, glancing between him and the empty street behind her. And then, before she could talk herself out of it, she slipped into the passenger seat. The drive was silent, but the tension between them was anything but. Zane's hand rested loosely on the wheel, his jaw tight as if he was battling thoughts he couldn't say aloud. Amara stared out the window, the city lights blurring as they sped through Kingston, leaving the familiar streets far behind. Finally, they stopped at a secluded lookout point high above the city. The skyline stretched before them, the lights shimmering like stars fallen to earth. It was breathtaking, but Amara barely noticed. Her heart pounded in her chest, and the air inside the car felt heavy with unspoken words. Zane turned off the engine, the sudden silence making her pulse quicken. "Why are you doing this?" Amara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Zane leaned back in his seat, his gaze steady on her. "Because I can't stop thinking about you." The honesty in his voice hit her like a punch to the gut. She wanted to be angry, to tell him to leave her alone. But the truth was, she had been thinking about him too. More than she wanted to admit. "You don't even know me," she whispered, her voice shaky. "I want to." Zane's voice was low, almost a plea. "I know we come from different worlds, Amara. I know this is complicated, but I don't care." The weight of his words hung between them, thick and undeniable. And before Amara could talk herself out of it, Zane reached for her hand. His touch was warm, steady, reassuring in a way she hadn't expected. Every nerve in her body came alive at the feel of his skin against hers. It was electric, overwhelming, and so dangerous. Zane leaned closer, his thumb brushing gently over the back of her hand. "Tell me to stop and I will," he whispered, his breath warm against her skin. Amara's heart thundered in her chest. Every part of her knew she should pull away, should run before things spiraled out of control. But instead, she closed the distance between them. Their lips met in a kiss that was slow, deliberate, and full of all the things they hadn't said. It was a kiss that burned away every doubt, every fear, leaving only the raw, undeniable connection between them. Amara felt herself melt into him, her hands threading through his hair as his arms wrapped around her, pulling her closer. The world outside the car ceased to exist. There was only the two of them, caught in a moment that neither of them could stop. But just as quickly as the moment ignited, it was shattered by the sharp, insistent buzz of Zayne's phone. Zayne pulled away, his breath ragged, and glanced at the screen. His expression darkened instantly. "It's him again," he muttered, his jaw clenching. Amara didn't need to ask who. She knew. His father. The politician who controlled Zayne's every move, who would never approve of someone like her. Zayne let out a frustrated sigh, tossing the phone onto the dashboard. "I should go," he said, though every part of him looked like he wanted to stay. Amara nodded, her heart sinking. She knew this moment had to end, but that didn't make it any easier. Before he left, Zayne cupped her face gently in his hands, his eyes burning into hers. "This isn't over, Amara," he whispered, his voice thick with promise. "I'll find you again." And with that, he was gone, leaving Amara alone at the lookout, her heart racing, her mind reeling. As Amara watched Zayne's car disappear into the night, a chill ran down her spine. She knew that getting involved with him would come with consequences. What she didn't know was just how dangerous those consequences would be, because secrets like Zayne's didn't stay hidden forever. And when they came to light, they would threaten to tear everything apart, including the fragile connection they had just begun to build.